And now, the Android Basics segment. This is a segment where we discuss the things that power your device from behind the scenes. And now, here's this week's episode, Android Basics. We now move on to our next segment, and this is the Android Basics. John, today we're talking about podcast clients. And as I indicated at the start of the episode, we have so many of these things. Sometimes it's really hard to know which one to use. Of course, you have to try them to see which one you prefer, or if you listen to us and see what we think we like, maybe you could give it a try and see which of these would be the ones that you like. It's a very subjective subject matter at best when it comes to these things. I can't say, hey, this is the best. John, are you able to say which one is the best? I can't.
I will. I don't know who will agree with me. No, because I see the point you're trying to make. What does best mean? Best for somebody might be simple interface. Best for somebody else might be most customizable. So, we just have a lot of options, and what's best for you might not be best for somebody else.
That's the truth. So the whole idea is, what are you looking for in a podcast client? I think for me, one of the things that I look for in a podcast client, does it play both video and audio episodes? That's number one. Number two, does it support chapters? Number three, does it allow me to just stream without downloading? Because, sometimes some of them would not let you play. They want you to download. So if you're a subscriber to several podcast episodes, for example, or whatever, that means you're going to be downloading a lot. And I know, storage is not what it used to be, where storage was limited. We have bigger storage right now that we have on our phones than ever before. And if you happen to be one of those that have a mid-range phone, it still has an SD card. So one could choose to then download some of these episodes to the SD card. Now, however, I think for me, I just like to stream. But if you're traveling, for example, you don't want to be streaming on your data, right? Unless, of course, you have unlimited mobile data, and then you could do that. But I prefer to just stream mine. How about you, John? Do you like to download yours, or how do you consume your podcast?
I just stream. So, I'm glad that I can download them. If I'm going on a road trip or going to be on a flight or something like that, I can make sure I have something on device before I leave. But generally, I don't want them on my device. I just want to. I'm at home most of the time, and then when I am out, I use such little data that a podcast isn't gonna blow through my data like watching a video or something. So I like just having it on demand. Just stream it. It remembers your position as if you had it on device. So why have it on device if you don't need it?
So let's talk about some of the most popular ones that I think just about everyone knows, John. We've got Pocketcasts, right? It used to be Pocketcasts is my favorite. Of course, now and then, they break things, and
they do. And when they break it, they really break it. I think maybe it was a couple years ago at this point, but at some point you just couldn't interact with it at all. Like Explore by Touch was completely broken.
That was last year.
Yeah, it was it. Yeah. And it's like I had to find an older version of it and downgrade just to be able to use it. And so that's frustrating. But when it's working, it's a nice app. It's completely accessible. I'd say it's completely accessible with the exception of that one time they just broke it. But it generally, it's a good app.
Yeah. And I think one thing, though, that I know when that happened last year, and it happened a couple of times last year, where they messed up the accessibility. The good thing was that they were quick in responding, because I think probably they got a flurry of complaints from those of us who are blind, and it didn't take them time. An update was pushed out that corrected that. So I give it to them, though, that they push out updates really quick when there's an issue, especially with accessibility. I'm glad to know that we have people there that know accessibility or whatever. I think there's still one part of it. I don't remember what part it is. I think it was the filters that was a little bit not accessible, but I think it probably got fixed. Do you mess with the filters, John? And is that fixed? I think it has. I thought I took
I
a look at it, and I
Yeah,
think it was.
I never tried that feature. But yeah, they did fix it pretty quickly. This is why I like to, and I don't think if they have a beta available, I'm not in it. But this is why I like to be in the beta of any app that offers it, because this is the kind of thing I want to report before they release it to everyone else. So that's like where they broke the Explore by Touch. But like you said, it didn't take them maybe a couple weeks to get it fixed. But when that's your routine and you open the app every day and expect it to work, and you're going to go listen to your podcast and all of a sudden you can't, it's disappointing.
Yeah. And so if you're into Pocket Cast, that's something to be careful about, because they may break that accessibility, even though they may fix it on later on. So
Yeah,
it's
but
good to have
it
more
was
than
rare.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. To be fair, any app could break accessibility at any point. So we're not
exactly.
talking bad about Pocket Cast specifically. I was just commenting on why I like to be in betas.
And talking about betas, I think my whole entire life lives in a beta, because there's hardly any app on my device that is not in the beta. So most of my apps are in a beta. So I like those betas, because then you know what's coming on and what's broken, and you report those. Another one, though, John, that we talked about, or that we have, and probably we had a little demo of. We got a couple of them. We got the Antennapod, which you happen to be using a lot. I happen to be using that a lot as well. And one of the reasons why I like Antennapod, that chapter support that it has, it's one of my favorite because of that. Pocket Casts has it, but I think you have to subscribe. I don't remember. Yeah, it's like 99 cents a month or something like that. But it also gives you like a cloud access. In other words, you could have like up to 30 gigs of cloud storage, and you're also going to be able to play things or access stuff on your browser. And those are the benefits of the subscription for that Pocket Cast. But the antenna part, was there a subscription, John? I don't remember. Is it like,
No, it's free.
yeah,
I think I could be wrong but I don't think you have to subscribe to get. Now it might be different. Actually, I shouldn't. Let me specify, because it's a little confusing with Pocket Casts, because they had at one time where you could buy the pro version, right, years ago, before they introduced the subscription model. So
I did.
maybe
And
I'm grandfathered into chapters because of that, because I know I don't pay the monthly subscription and I had access to chapters, but that doesn't mean everybody does. So maybe that's where the discrepancy lies
yeah, so
there.
we're not very sure, because both you and I remember I purchased it back then when it was with the Australian developers, and then they sold it to NPR and all of that. So I had purchased it prior, which was a lifetime. But then the subscription thing came later on, 99 cents. I think you're right. Maybe it supports chapters out of the gate. But if you're wanting to be able to use your browser, for example, sync things on your browser and be able to access some of those features, then you need to have that 99-cent a
Yeah.
month subscription.
Yeah. So I'll just while we're talking about Antennapod. So I was using Pocket Casts until you did a demo of Antennapod for the podcast, and then I was like, this sounds interesting. I'm going to try it, and I love it. I have kept using it since then. I haven't gone back to Pocket Casts, and some of the things I like about it are So it's both, and this is kind of rare sometimes. It's both simple and customizable, meaning the interface is pretty simple, meaning there's not like a whole lot of extra swipes you have to go through when you're swiping between items. It's very basic, but when you go into the settings, there's a lot of things you can change. You can customize, you know, how the home screen displays, whether it's a list, whether it's tiles, how large the tiles are, how many columns there are, that sort of thing. You can choose what's in the menu, whether it shows downloads, subscriptions, episodes, up next. I don't think they call it up next, it's something else, but you can set what your default page is when you first open it. You can set what items are in the menu when you open the menu, or you can set whether you even want to have to open a menu or if you'd rather have tabs across the bottom. So, I just have tabs across the bottom, and I just have a couple tabs, like my home screen, and then just a couple others, and then you can open the menu for settings. So it's very customizable. And like I said earlier, simple. It has the feature you mentioned earlier where you can turn on to only stream. Obviously, you can go in and select an episode and download it if you want to, but it's not going to download anything automatically. And
Yeah.
it's got good options as far as playback too. Sometimes, I think this came up recently on the mailing list. If you're an audio ducking user, and I know you aren't, Warren, but I do use audio ducking.
Yeah, I'm not.
And it's nice when it works, but what some apps do, media apps, is they'll pause playback when you get a notification so you can hear your notification. But the problem is that apps that do that also pause playback whenever TalkBack starts talking instead of just lowering the volume like it's supposed to. And this app, I think this does it by default, but you can go in and change the setting. Any app I use, whether it's an audiobook app, a podcast app, anything that plays media, I always make sure there's an option to disable the stop playback for interruptions. It's usually called stop playback for interruptions or stop playback for notifications, something like that. But yeah, there is a setting you can change so that audio ducking works the way it's supposed to.
And I think that's a great app for me. When I'm looking at one of those things, I get an interruption, maybe a call comes through or maybe a notification or whatever. I don't mind too much of the notification, but when I have a call, for example, or you have something, if say you're someone that likes your notifications being read out, for example, I want that thing to pause so that I'm not losing my place. And I like apps that have that. And I know that when we talked about e-readers, the playbooks is one of those. And I really like that feature. And so this is one of the features I like in a podcast that does that, because I don't want the thing to be playing on while I'm trying to listen to something else or a call and I'm talking and that thing is playing in the background. It can be very annoying if you ask me.
So me and you are opposite with this, which is why customization is good, right? You want to be able to hear things. You want it to stop, and I don't want it to stop, because my use case is I'm usually listening to something and using my phone at the same time. So I'm like navigating around, like I might be listening to something while I'm like looking at my messages. And of course, every time TalkBack talks, I don't want it to stop the playback of my podcast, but that's not how you use yours. It sounds like from what you've described, you're just listening to it, right?
Yes.
And if you get a notification, because you don't have a lot of notifications enabled, the ones that are enabled are important, and you want it to hear what it is, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
You got me, John. That's exactly how I use my podcast clients, and with notifications that I have running that I allowed, because I don't allow notifications, but frankly, I will hate for me not being able to have what I'm listening to pause, because when I'm listening to something, I'm dedicating my time to that, and I don't want the thing to slip away from me, and then I'm trying to rewind or whatever. I hate doing that with a passion, if I may add.
Yeah.
So,
It's funny. I don't take podcasts as seriously as you. So when when I'm listening to a
so, John, are
podcast,
you
it's kind
telling
of
them not to take our podcast seriously?
I'm saying I wouldn't. Like podcasts for me are usually background noise. Well, they're more
Yeah,
than background
I
noise. I'm
understand.
interested in them obviously, but I don't care if I miss something important. Like if I'm listening to an audiobook, then I definitely don't want to miss anything. I'm
Exactly.
constantly rewinding my audiobooks just because my mind starts wandering. Like even if I'm trying to pay attention and my mind starts wandering, I end up having to rewind my audiobooks because I don't want to miss anything in an audiobook, but I'm a little more lenient when it comes to podcasts.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, so those are some of the features that I look for if you're me, outside of the ones I mentioned earlier, that is being able to support both audio and video, and also that chapter support and all of that. But then have that ability to pause when some phone call comes in, or some notification is getting read. For example, someone at my door, and I get that a lot. So I don't want, that interruption in there.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I think this only applies to notifications. I think all media always pauses when you get a phone call. At least it should, unless there's something wrong with the app. So yeah, this mainly pertains to notifications. And
Yeah.
of course, using your screen reader, like I mentioned earlier.
Another one that I was using, or I use a lot, and while I don't necessarily use it a lot for its podcasting capability, John, is the AudialsPlay that we also demoed for one of our episodes. And one of the reasons why I like AudialsPlay is the fact that it has a support for radio stations as well, and as well as TV stations. And there's a TV station that I like listening to, which is the Newsmax. And it used to be that the app would let you listen, or you could listen on whatever, but now they want you to pay like $5 a month. And so Audios Play has that. And I tell you, I couldn't be happier, because now I'm able to listen to Newsmax on my Audios Play. And so that's one of those reasons I really like that Audios Play. So I use it a lot, and especially because when I need to listen to that Newsmax, then I use that Audios Play.
Another one worth mentioning, I don't use it, but I know a lot of people do use it. It's called Podcast Addict. I know that's brought up a lot. Have you ever used that one, Warren?
The Addict, whenever we
Mhm.
talk about Addict, I'm looking at Steve Nuts from the UK. He
Yeah.
probably is going to cut my head off. But yeah, so Steve really loves um, what is it?
Podcast
Podcast
Addict.
Addict. Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's good.
I just call it the Addict.
Yeah, it's a good app. It's accessible. I don't have too many complaints about it. I mean, my complaint is that it just feels bloated to me. Like there's too much to it. I kind
It's
of
a
like a
lot.
more simpler interface, but there's nothing wrong with it as far as accessibility, as far as I could tell.
It's a
Um,
great app. I think the when it comes to accessibility, John, the guy is always on top of things. I tried it once, but like you said, I didn't like it. There was just too much in the way of the settings. And if one of you guys want to demo this for our podcast, we'll be more than happy. I've been wanting to do it, but it's kind of too overwhelming, and I just never got to it. And um, if there's another drawback to it, is that it doesn't sync across your devices. I think that's one of the big ones for me, and one of the must-haves for me on a podcast client is that sync capability, being able to sync across those different devices. If it's not syncing across those different devices, is it syncing or is it syncing?
I say syncing.
Yeah, I was thinking, yeah. Yeah, so really, that I think that's a big one. But like I said, it just varies from person to person. That may be a non-starter with someone, and to someone else, it's no problem at all. Was there another one, popular one? I know there's Castbox. Of course, the Google podcast died last year, so it's not
Yeah.
even worth a mention. John, is there another one? I'm
Well, a
talking
lot
about
of
the good
people
ones.
use, we should mention it because a lot of people just use Spotify for podcasts, right? I
Oh
mean, you think
yeah.
of it as a music service, but it's one of the leading podcast services as well. So, I mean, I can't comment on it because I don't use it, but have you ever tried it?
No, I don't even use Spotify at all. It's not something that I use. I know both my wife and my daughters, they like Spotify. I just don't. And, while you mentioned that, John, TuneIn Radio is also, even though it's a radio app, it also supports
Hmm.
podcasts and
Yeah,
good old,
everybody's doing podcasts these days,
yeah,
right? I mean, a
exactly.
lot of people just use YouTube for their podcasts, and YouTube Music, the YouTube Music app does podcasts as well. So, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to listen to podcasts.
Yeah. So when it comes to podcasting client, we have things to choose from. So my recommendation is that, you try them and see which one you like best. Or if you have a preconceived idea as to what you want in a podcast client, like we've just mentioned, if you have those, then you check to see if that particular client supports the items or features that you're looking for. If it doesn't, then get the other one that supports it. And then, of course, for us, that is those of us who are blind, the question of accessibility. It has to be accessible, or else you'll be left in the cold. And a lot of podcast clients out there supports that OPML, you being able to import
Yeah,
subscriptions from
exactly.
another one.
As
And so,
I
yeah,
was going to mention that as well, because don't be afraid. Don't think, oh, well, I already have all my subscriptions here, so I'm kind of stuck. Like, no, you feel free to explore and try something else different because most of these clients we mentioned, if not all of them, do support that. So you're able to export all of your subscriptions to a file and then import it into the new podcast client if you do want to switch.
exactly. And because sometimes some of them are kind of hard to go through the discovery and find what you're looking for. So if you have a client that you have and you're getting a new one, then just export those and then import that. It makes it simple. And you don't have to go through all that, one by one and, resubscribing on that other one.
Yeah,
So
I'm
I like
sure
that.
some of us have a lot of subscriptions, like hundreds probably, if you're a podcast listener for years and years, you know.
Yeah. How many podcasts do you subscribe to, John? I think for me, I think I could count maybe probably, I say maybe about a little over 10. Um, I
Hmm.
think that's what I
I would
have.
say at 10 is probably how many I listen to regularly, but I'm subscribed to a lot. It's probably like over 50. Yeah, I have a lot of podcasts, so
Wow.
that's why I want to make sure to
That's
mention to
why
people
that's
that
why
you
you don't
can,
have.
yeah, you don't have to start from scratch. You can, there is a way to import your subscriptions if you have a large collection that you've built up over the years.
And with that many podcast subscriptions that you have, John, definitely I can see why you don't want phone calls pausing. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, if I could, I would listen to my podcast and have a phone call at the same time.
Oh boy. Someone would tell you, I'm glad you're married, because if you're having a news quiz and you have a podcast going on, she probably will be pissed off at you. You're not paying attention, young man.
But she wouldn't know. It would be only in my ears. She wouldn't hear it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, I have like maybe a little over 10. I think probably maybe at the most I have 15. And for example, the AudialsPlay that I mentioned earlier on allows you to have up to 20, because it's one of those apps that is called a freemium. So you don't have ads, but you are limited to the number of podcasts that you can be subscribed to. So I think it allows you to subscribe to up to 20. But if you want more, then you have to have that annual subscription of 99 cents. But 99 cents in a year is better than the 99 cents per month for the Pocket Casts.